Being told we've been able to establish a connection with Chris Crawford, who is the defense attorney who represented Gregory Malarik. Let's bring Chris in now. Chris, good morning to you. Congratulations on the victory. John Malarik and I were just talking about what a big victory
surreal.
It was. Yeah, your reaction, please.
I was somewhat surprised, but I thought towards the end of the case it was ours to lose. I think the jury from a legal aspect was correct. I think if you ask anybody what happened that night, they're going to say, we really don't know. No one can give you the step-by-step of what occurred, but at the end of the day, it's a very emotional case. And that was always one of our concerns, is you have, as you saw, family members, children who testified in this trial, and it was heart-wrenching at times. So when we received the verdict, I got emotional. I know my client was almost catatonic, and we've been still kind of feeling it throughout the weekend. It was a very long trial, very long hours, long nights. So at the end of the day, I look back on what they said, and I believe from a legal standpoint, like I said, it's right. But it takes a lot of courage to be those jurors who say that.
Certainly. This is a case that I'm sure fractured for many years, the family. And I could just see it on the faces in the courtroom. You could tell who was happy about the verdict, who was not. Very, very tragic case. Certainly one, I'm sure, Chris, you would acknowledge, where even though you were victorious legally, your client is thrilled. I'm sure it's one where there are no winners because Sherry Malarik is dead and there isn't justice for her death. Maybe there will be someday. I don't know where prosecutors will go next, but where will your client be going next? What are his plans now, Chris?
You know, it's funny because after we received the verdict and late in the night as we're packing up, he was discussing with me kind of returning back to this normal life. He wants to return back to his work. He was still working on the Navy base. That was in his mind, was to try to return to normalcy, though I don't think that will truly ever happen. And as you said, this family is more than fractured. It's split. And the truth is, law enforcement added to the split, to be very honest with you. So he will never have the same life that he had before.
And how so, Chris? Do you mean with the charging of your client?
Yeah, what law enforcement was doing is knowing that some of these, for lack of a better term, children, I mean, these individuals are in their 30s and late 20s at this point in time, knowing that they were witnesses, they would try to curry favor by passing along messages such as, you know, Jennifer Spohn told us this, Jennifer Spohn told us that, with some kind of intent to turn some of these kids against Greg.
Did you know that Jennifer Spohn was going to be testifying?
No, we didn't. I mean, when we first received this case, it was about 2 weeks before COVID really kicked in. We're talking very early March. And if you look at the first arrest report, all it really said was that Jennifer Spohn gave inconsistent statements. We had no idea what Jennifer Spohn's full story or at least her first interview was until maybe 5-6 months into the case. Because when it first came into my office for the better part of March, April, May, everything was shut down. We didn't know what was going on. We couldn't get a hold of anybody. There was very little communication. So we take the case in March, and then he's indicted for first-degree premeditated murder in July, and you couldn't even get to the courthouse. I mean, it's mind-blowing to me that they were able to indict him when the courthouse wasn't really even open.
Wow.
So this was, from the beginning, a wild, wild case.
Sure. And Chris, as you know, there are always things that don't come into evidence that the jury doesn't know, the public doesn't know, but as lawyers, you know. Was there anything with this case that the public was unable to be aware of and you would like to make the public aware of at this time?
There's so much that this is a 2-decade-long story. So there's so much that went along that it's hard to really say this is the one thing I want the public to be aware of. What I would want everyone to understand is for the first at least 5 years, law enforcement was doing a very good job and they were investigating this to the best they can. what happened is they made a decision about 5 years in to think, we don't really have a strong enough case against this guy. And what's the benefit to try to prosecute him and split the family to pieces and try to at least take the last remaining parent that these kids have away? That was a real decision made in about 04, 05. Then what happens is some other prosecutors and some other investigators get involved, and they kind of detour this towards a different direction. And when you see that in the timeline, bad things start happening. They're not really testing the evidence that they need to test. They're doing the wrong test. They're literally destroying evidence by the test that they're doing at the time. So what I'm trying to say is I don't want people to look back and think law enforcement here locally did anything wrong, because that's not our belief. What we believe is at one point in time, there were just too many cooks in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. And when you're looking at Mr. Malarik, it's perfectly fine to think this guy's an adulterer. He's not the best guy. That is perfectly fine for everybody to think. And that's more likely than not true. But the evidence just did not prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt.
Chris Crawford, we enjoyed seeing you in action. Please come back on opening statements sometime soon. Give us some analysis on
back down to me.
Another case. Oh, we'd love to see it. Hey, if you've got another trial going, let us know. We want to put the cameras there. Congrats on the win. We have to say goodbye. Take good care.